turns left.
Why?
74.
Or wear and tear on this side of the road.
We're on the way to Phillip's wedding to Denver.
Turns left further?
This is the famous tunnel that's, I don't know, a mile or two.
Yeah, except you can't do it here. It's square.
They did on the movies.
Sorry
Fake
about
did
jiggling,
you?
we're in the motorhome.
Well, they have to go there
Daniel
now,
and Jennifer are here, Mom and Dad and
There must have
Teresa,
been something over there
Kurt and I.
before.
Do they have this in the movies? This tunnel?
Not tunnels like this. I don't know if it is this tunnel.
Why would they do that?
Brad and Kristen and Janelle and
There
John
must
are
be
in
something over there.
Kristen's van behind
Put it
us.
up now.
We have walkie-talkies that we've been talking to each other with.
50 speed limit.
We could be busted in a second if we were in that lane.
Good thing we came out.
Fireflies.
It's the other end of the tunnel.
Oh, that was a mile?
Mile and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I looked at the odometer.
So, quick question for everybody else. Is there anyone here that can hold stuff? Oh, I've got Bob, he's going to get distracted. Everybody kind of clear back just a little bit. Alright, so actually you guys come out. I got it. You know, that kind of chivalrous spring out of the temple. Oh, that's awesome. I guess we'll go back up. Alright, you guys are perfect.
I hope I have enough chocolate. I should.
There it is. nice, but nobody's getting it.
As long as it holds up.
Hello.
M-A-R-R-I-E-D.
Yes. We need spell check for you?
Yeah.
You guys coming to help?
Whose wash cup is this? Whose one?
That's mine.
You have trash outside. Throw that away.
Smells nice.
There's one just inside in the kitchen.
Happy wedding, Philip. Congratulations. We love you. Tried to do a nice job.
Should have got Jason out here.
Tried to discourage some of
I'll
it.
go get him if you want.
You should.
Get who? Philip?
People are starting to come.
No, I was gonna put it on.
Those are the hands of a working man.
I just wanted, I wanted to be able to have the best man in the maid of honor, and my father and close father, they wanted to say the words, and then we wanted to toss the bouquet. So I just kind of turn the time over to the boss. Go ahead. I'll go and talk to you. We have a lot of memories here, that's for sure. All good ones. Maybe babies, maybe shoulders. Congratulations.
We kind of see, well, we both grew up with these people there, so we got lots of memories. I don't want to get in trouble, so.
Well, I'm glad to get Jenny here at this point. Pretty happy to know Phil. We're excited to have him in our family. And just looking forward to great things from him. Brother Linford mentioned the sealing ceremony that, well, Brother Linford gave Jenny her blessing. One of the things that, as I sat there listening and received the paper blessing, it was just an awesome experience. Realizing what a great spirit she was with pre-existence. So she demonstrated that throughout her life. And I know Phil is equal to that task as well. And just happy to have him. Looking forward to his love, his enthusiasm, his smile, and I know that was really nice.
Well, I'm just really pleased about what's happening today. I was also thinking a little bit more about things I said today, and one of the expectations of parents, both parents, raising their children. And as I was watching the little video clips over here, that just really reminded me of how we raised these children up. Just hoping that the situation that we have covers our kids. Congratulations.
See ya.
Good luck! Drive safe!
Everyone pretend like you're throwing rice.
I didn't get to see you right.
Get out of here.
You come back? Wait, hold on. Hey.
And there's one out of the tree.
You like Dallin?
It's a horror movie.
Dallin and I were climbing up by this one lake, and he got up, and I had to push him up,
Like, the thing was slithering in my...
and he saw it, the Bear Ranch.
Oh, dude,
Look how big that sprinkler is. It's got to be 500 feet.
It sure looked better from up where we were looking before. That was,
The trees weren't in the way.
yeah, you can see so many.
It looked better up there. Oh, a teepee.
Better with that camera, Eric.
Brakes are like, wow. Well, they really turned it up there.
Oh, touch the snake. I want to get away from nature.
I just like go touch the snake. They're all over the place here.
Wait.
There must be lots of snakes there.
Away from nature.
Wow.
Oh, I know now. Look, right up on the hill, there's some Indians. They probably came down and sabotaged it.
They shot one of the tires with their bow and arrow.
All the gold.
John said someone put penny on the track. Make the wheels uneven.
I would think it was $1 bill from higher currency.
So what are you doing?
As you can tell, there's a train
Just
wreck
so that you know when you're taking these still
in Glenwood,
pictures.
Colorado on our trip back home from Phillip's wedding. Cards down there.
Would be waste of energy if I didn't see anything for you.
We'll do it again.
Same whatever. This is a... Oh, just people doing that house. It's just clothing, right? What it feels like when you're pulling up to, you know, if it pulls on its train at all, or if they just go and he hears it when it comes back.
Looks like.
Straight up in the air. Length.
I just can't wait to teach you.
Welcome you to our 59th Christmas party. And I've been advised that seniority required me to again MC this program. And my unique walker over here suggests that I now sit right here and read my script, which now says for me to wheeze Grant.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
That spot for a week and he wouldn't let me read at that spot.
Any future Romeos out there can take note, because this is a formula for marital happiness, and I've been waiting 40 years to pull it up. Now, the history of the original Smith family. Christmas parties started with my first celebration in 1924, and I was a 3-month-old baby. My grandparents had 12 children, 3 sons and 9 daughters, which number quickly grew to over 100 that were annually invited to their 1-bath, 5-bedroom, spiritually ornated home, which was 2 blocks away from Liberty Park in Salt Lake. Granddad was made bishop, and he built the Liberty Ward, and my father was later a state president without ever being a bishop. No gifts were ever given or received at that party. A beautiful tree was always decorated. Many discussions on religious, political, and financial consideration questions. They were also reviewed were some that were heard from the kitchen regarding the proper method which is to be used when baking a cake in a lump coal-fired iron stove. Dad played the piano. As the eldest son, he emceed the program. Mom brought Relief Society songbooks, and she led the beautiful music which filtered out into a neighborhood where others also sang while covered in blankets on their own front porches. That was quite an impression. There were 4 young scouts who would also speak to each other through hand signals on the floor while being closely watched by their parents. Mom's left eye kept a watch as she led the music, and Dad's left foot also gave us a caution as to how far that would go. The dinner consisted of potluck snacks, apple juice, and pie, some of which would mysteriously disappear without parents' notice or permission. When our family patriarch and his wife passed away, my own parents continued on with the tradition, and later your gran and I began to also celebrate with our own little family, which now numbers over 75. The current arrivals and expected additions include a beautiful and reportedly well baby girl that Tanya delivered last week. Then 2 days ago, Josh called to announce that Merlin is a great-grandmother again.
Not great, just
grandmother. To another boy, and they will continue to stay in Waco, Texas. My children are now grandparents to 35 souls. Those in waiting include Janelle and John Lacey in Cedar City, Jonessa and Jake, who have decided to move down from Seattle back here into Zion, and Kristen and Bradley Shumway from Logan. The new faces this time include a Papa and invited guest who's returned from the Brazilian mission, Cody Graham, and Megan. I think he ought to stand so we can give him a clap. Now begin the program by having two verses of Graham's favorite symphony, Ike, Ike, and Ike.
You gotta get this.
He's a kid-in-law.
Youth man.
You're watching, huh?
This is the national anthem.
I'm coming.
Everybody ready?
I got it. The Cougars are out.
Turncoats. You're gonna sing it now.
Nobody likes us. We are the boys from old South High. Always a winning, always a grinning, always a feeling fine.
One more time.
One more time. Ready?
Like us, nobody likes us. We are the boys from old South High. Always a winning, always a grinning, always a feeling fine.
Story of my favorite Christmas. Through much thought and pondering, it was hard to decide. I have had many favorite Christmases, but one stands out greater than all the rest. I have decided to choose the Christmas morning that I brought Jenny Lynn home from the hospital. She came the night before Grandma and Papa's Christmas party. It was December 22nd, 1983. Some of you were there and came to the hospital that night and brought Christmas lights to decorate my hospital room with. That was the only Christmas party of my parents that I have ever missed. Just when I was feeling bad that I had missed the party, I realized I didn't miss it. It all came to me, I thought, with all your good wishes, decorations, and gifts. It was a wonderful time to have a baby. Though I didn't have my baking done, the shopping was very difficult, and I felt like I looked like a house and very unattractive. I had a special piece about me that I vividly remember, but I cannot explain. Through that miserable last month of pregnancy, I remember trying to place the story of the Bible in Luke through my mind and pretending I was Mary having her baby. On September 29th, my 28th birthday, I had an ultrasound done. The technician said that I was having a girl, but I knew that if there was a 2% chance that could be wrong, it would be me, and I would not be having a girl. So I knew it was another son and brought nothing pink and only blue things to the hospital to bring my new baby home in. Through my pregnancy, I had been shopping looking for new things for my newly 5th child. On one occasion, I was in a store called Nelson's Baby News and saw the beautiful white canopy crib saw a white canopy crib, the most beautiful one you ever saw. When I returned home, I told my husband how very much I would love to get a new crib for Christmas that year. We made a deal. My husband said, knowing he was pretty safe that I was going to have another boy, if I had a girl, I could get it. But if it was a son, I must keep the old crib that I had had with our other 4 sons. When Jenny was born, my husband said, "Merry Christmas, looks like you're getting that new canopy crib you've been wanting." We needed one badly. Jason, the baby before, was a monkey and bounced till the squeaks were so loud it awakened the whole house. It was hard to leave the hospital with a name for our baby. The statistics people were pressuring us and wanted us to have a name for our baby before we left. But no name was perfect enough for such a perfect, tiny, petite little girl. We had talked about naming her an M name like my name was, but Michelle, Mary, or McKenna, none of them seemed right for our new baby. When I got home and looked at those homemade stockings I had made hung on the hearth, they were so cute. Josh, Jake, Jared, Jason, and then I knew it must be another J, just like all the other children. Since I didn't believe that our new baby was going to be a girl, I really didn't have any girl names picked out. She was going to be Jordan or Justin if she was a boy. Each son before that was Jamie if they were going to be a girl, but that had been almost used over and over. I liked Jennifer, but it seemed too long for such a tiny little baby. Jenny, yes, Jenny, it was perfect. That name seemed wholesome, simple, traditional, yet a small name as she was so small. After having 4 healthy, happy sons, I knew how very blessed we were to have a sister for them. The thoughts of Christmas kept ringing in my mind. I kept thinking of Mary, and I knew I was experiencing some of the same type of feelings she had the day Jesus was born. I tried to picture riding a mule or a donkey in my state. I tried to think how ballistic I would have been if an innkeeper had told me that there was not even one room for me to deliver my baby in. I thought I had a new perspective at Christmas, since I was in that physical state as Mary was once upon a time. Jenny Lynn was born very healthy, and she ate like a horse. We had no concerns for her at that time, only that she was small. She was 4 pounds 14 ounces and 17 inches long. Very much like she is today, she was small but healthy. From the very moment our sweet little girl was placed in our arms, my husband and I knew that our lives had changed and that it would never be the same. That was to say the least. It has been life-altering since then. Some for difficulty and some sheer joy. She has been the closest feeling I have ever experienced on this earth to the celestial kingdom. I felt her spirit from the very moment I held her for the very first time, and we both had an instant bond. I know the Lord had something very large for her in store. But what I didn't know, that I do know now, is that the Lord had something very large in store for me as her mother. There again, I think of Mary, the uncertainty that she had felt for the future, all of the unknowns that I was feeling. I came home from the hospital on Christmas morning. The hospital gave me a stocking large enough to put my baby in. When we came home, we had a little Christmas present for my sons. I remember putting the stocking with our baby in it under the Christmas tree. Their very first sister, they were so excited. They had received skis and boots that year. They had more Star Wars figures and action vehicles than you can imagine, but they could not have cared less. They fought over who got to hold their new baby sister next. I sat there in my dark green robe with tears streaming down my face. I felt so very grateful for this special Christmas day, and knew as they lined up to hold her that this was the most special Christmas day I would ever have. And it was. When we blessed Jenny many months later, I was confused by the blessing. It said that she would affect all her brothers and sisters for good. Sisters? Did he really say sisters? My eyes opened as if that was some major revelation or something. I thought I was through and done with our family. Not in the least. Jenny has many other sisters now. Jessica, Jonessa, Jenny, Heather, Rachel, and Janessa, her bestest buddy ever. I believe that blessing has come true. She has affected us all for good. My sons are better men, better husbands, better employees, we're better missionaries, and are better fathers because of her affecting them for the good. Our whole family has been blessed by her life. She has a mission of her own. That was my favorite Christmas, the day Jenny entered all of our lives. Merry Christmas to you all, and may we all strive to affect others for the good. A wise man once said, live your life in such a way that those who know you but don't know Christ will want to know Christ because they know you.
And I could just tell you about quite a few. Real short. I guess the first one that came to mind when she said that was my Christmas of 1969, because that's when Road Light fell in love. And those of you who have fallen in love during that time know that the music and the feeling of Christ and all of that, when you're contemplating special commitments to someone special, it's really every time Christmas comes around, there are certain songs, certain things. We get it elbowed down a bit because we remember that year. And we got engaged on January 1st, but really when we were really getting close was during Christmas time, and that was really special for us. When I was little, some of the fun ones when I was little were, first of all, on Christmas Eve, we always would go to the dollhouse with our extended family on the Smith side. And we didn't see them a lot as little kids, but we always knew we had our favorite cousins, and we would go sit by them and do things with them, like you guys are here. And it was a fancy meal that we didn't get to have real often. I remember sometimes my cousins would come and they'd put glitter in their hair, and I thought they were so pretty. And the great big 70s poofs that would just glitter, and I thought it was so wonderful. And then we'd go to my Grandma Winnie's house, and they would have a special program there. And a lot of times it would be a little nativity scene or Christmas music, and they were both very talented. It was always a special memory, and I knew all year that that was going to come up, and we would do that every year. And then first thing Christmas morning, it would be Mark Wade coming into my room saying, "I'm supposed to be awake. Let's go see if we can." So we'd peek down and go down the hall. We'd go about third way down, and we'd go back, and 2/3 of the way down, do they hear us? And we'd go all the way down. If you go just around Grandma's house, you know, you can go either side there. One would kind of be the lookout, and the other one could just peek around the corner just a little bit. They didn't wrap the presents, so you could see some really good stuff from there. We'd probably seen most of it by the time they thought we'd really come out and see it. But we would go out there, we'd have our own little special place. I would have one side of the couch, and Maureen had the other side of the couch. And Wade had one chair, and Mark had the other chair, and everything was divided very carefully, so we knew that everybody had their own little things. And I remember one year when I was a little older, you know what I wanted more than anything in the world was a basketball set. I used to have to go up to our high school and play, and I just loved playing just by myself. But I really wanted one really bad, but I didn't think that I would get one. And I kind of mentioned it to Mom and Dad. I don't remember, maybe I asked them for that, but I kind of just thought I mentioned it. But when I came out and saw the basketball stand out there, I thought that was really cool. And we still have that old basketball stand. Sometimes the kids come home and use that same old basketball stand. So that lasted a long time. Another one that I really remember was the year that I had Phillip. A lot of my memories were like brilliant because when you have a baby at Christmas time, you think a lot about your connection, your giving life, and the Savior, and that was really special. But our experience with having Phillip, though, was unique because our family broke out with chickenpox that year, just barely before I went in. So I had all these four little ones at home, chicken pox.
And tell how they got them. From my
Thanksgiving. They got them at Thanksgiving. So that it just was in time for...
Jake had scabs, but we didn't go.
But they were okay. And there was enough days. The doctor told me there was enough days. But surprise, you gave mothers. So Janelle, the poor kid, she's the first one that got it. She just broke out so bad. And I, you know, when you love your kids so much, I'm giving birth to somebody to take care of my little chicken pox baby. So I grabbed them Berlin, and they dressed her and made her look pretty, and got her some nice jammies on. And then I thought, I was so grateful that there was somebody there at home that I knew that could take care of her, so that I could have my special time with Phillip in the hospital, and my kids were taken care of. And then when I came home, now somehow we've got to separate these kids, because at the time we didn't know the others had all gotten it yet. We were hoping that maybe we could avoid the whole outbreak of all of them. So my mother-in-law down there took the one, Janelle, and the other sister-in-law took the other kids. And I was home with Phillip trying to recuperate. And this was during Christmas. They were awfully busy and they had their own lives. But they stopped for the whole week and fed my kids soup and took care of them, and yet all the other ones got chicken pox too. So we had our chicken pox Christmas. But you know, it ended up, you'd think that would have been one of the worst ones, but it was one of the best ones because everyone had served me and made it so that that brand new baby did not get chicken pox. At least not then. He did later, but I was so worried that that newborn was going to get it, and he didn't, and that's because so many people helped me and served me, and I was really grateful to them. I could go on, and I'll only just choose those few, but what I want to say now is just how much we appreciate Grammy and Papa and the wonderful Christmases they have given us. Now that I'm a grandma, at Thanksgiving we had 31 in our house, and I thought I was going to die. I love it more than anything when they're all there in the same room. It's a ton of work, and you always want to do something special, so you're worried about something kind of silly. But, you know, being a parent at this stage is a little bit different than being a parent at your stage. Everything for you is at home. And everybody goes and gets married, and you see them all one-on-one. And there's a special thing about that, but there's also something about standing in a room like this and saying, these are all my kids. These are all my grandkids. There's, I don't know, a power, a patriarchal something that goes on in your heart, because this is what you've given your whole life and soul to. And I appreciate all those years and all those times that Grandpa's done that for themselves and for us, and also for your generation.
Because until you get to be our age, you don't appreciate the road you've come down. You don't appreciate the road you're on until you get to the end of the road. And what Chris, Merlin, and I are thinking about right now is the fact that we're coming to the end of a road. In a way, it's the end of our childhood. It is very, very needed. And as we think about the Christmases along the way, some of you are picking up, in Cody's case, the beginning is the end, all wrapped up in one here. But there's, and for the rest of you, there have been moments. I can remember, for example, when we, those of you who were there will remember this, the cousins will remember this, when we dressed Nathan and Ryan and Dustin up as chipmunks. Do you remember that one? They had to sing the chipmunk song, and I have never had a meaner glare from Nate in my whole lifetime. Well, I dressed him up as a chipmunk, and he had to sing Chipmunk Christmas with his brother. He back and forth. He looked at me like he was going to kill me. But I slowly walked up and whispered, smiled at him, either you do that or you'll die. He looked at me, glared at me, and he got through it. We played the video. We have the video at home. When we want a good laugh, we just play the video and watch it.
See that video. I gotta be seen on my car after.
Well, we've got a picture. Megan and I were looking at some pictures recently of family Christmas parties, and there was one with you and the great big trump, or the great big, was it a saxophone that you played? You. Yeah, who played the saxophone?
Josh.
Josh. Was it Josh? Okay. It was Josh and 2 or 3 others with a great big saxophone. Looked like the Osmonds coming together there. All the guitar songs and so on. And it's fun to reminisce and to think about that. Now for us, as Chris mentioned earlier, for us, it all began at the Dollhouse. Now, who knows what the Dollhouse is? Do you know what that is even? If you go to Salt Lake City on Main Street, at 13th South, Main Street, 13th South, there's a Wade Subaru, Nate Wade Subaru place there. And you continue south down that road, and off to your right now is an old restaurant called the Golden Dragon. That was the Dollhouse. And that's where we would roll in, excited to see all of our cousins. And as Chris mentioned, we would go down there and have a great meal. And Grandpa Smith started the tradition of giving money out. Now, this Grandpa Smith started the tradition of giving out, was it $10 bills? And that got a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And we liked seeing him get raises at work whenever that could happen. You know? But the point was, we'd then go up to Grandma Smith's house, up to their house. We'd all find somewhere on the rug, and we'd read the scriptures. And one of the things I remember most about Grandma Smith's house, my mother's house, was her Christmas tree. She had an aluminum Christmas tree that had a light that turned with colors. And the light would turn, and that Christmas tree would turn to red, and then it would die, and then it would turn blue, and then it would die, and then it would change colors. And she also used to have
Bubble lights.
the bubble lights. She had lights that bubbled. And Dad still, you remember most of those trees, Dad would get hurt his trees. That tradition, so for some of you, that may not have meant anything, but Dad put those bubble lights on his trees for years. And the bubble lights were an extension of that generation of Christmas parties. As far as a Christmas as a child, the one I remember the most is one where I used to climb out in the hallway and lay by the heater in the nighttime. I was weird, y'all know that, I still am. And I went down the hallway and laid in front of the heater at nighttime. And I happened to overhear Mom and Dad talking in their bedroom about how expensive things were. And they talked about the fact that they wanted to get some new furniture. And they didn't think they could afford it. And they talked about the fact that particular Christmas, Mark wanted a guitar. And I was dying for this bicycle. I had a little bike with a flute. It didn't even inflate. The tires didn't inflate. It was just pure rubber. And they skidded the brakes. And it was a hand-me-down. Mark had skidded the brakes so many times it was flat on one end. So when I went down the road riding with Kent Toon, the neighbor, he and Mark were riding their big bikes, and I would go boop, 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 boop. They'd make fun of me and tease me. So all I wanted was a bicycle. And when I heard Mom and Dad talk about that, I thought, well, that's it. There's not going to be any bicycle for me. And I pretty much wrote it off and figured that bike wouldn't be there. Well, to my surprise, as Chris mentioned, Mark would wake us up. Mark was the one that would drag us out of bed and tell us it was Christmas morning. He wants to shoot down there. And I don't think there ever was a Christmas morning, but we got up any sooner than 6 o'clock, did we? Chris, was it? Yes. Mark, yeah, it was always early. It was always real early. Mark was anxious to get out there, and so he'd get me up, and then Mark would get Chris up, and then, we'd eventually end up down the hallway, and we'd peek around the corner, and then Chris and Mom and Dad here scrambling, and we'd go out, and all the oohs and the ahs would take place, and so on. But when I walked out around that corner and I saw that red, I actually rounded the corner thinking, excited for Mark, excited to see his guitar. And as I came around that left-hand side by the planter there where Grandma is, I made a left instead of a right. And my chair was the one where the dining room table is now. There was an armchair just as you come out of the kitchen. That was where my chair was. Mark's was over where the organ is now. Chris and Merlin were over on the couch. And I went left and went around the planter and came in that way and saw Mark's guitar, walked over to him, watched him play, and he was so excited. And it must have been at least 4 or 5 minutes later, I turned around and I saw this great big bicycle sitting over there. And boy, was I thrilled. So that was one of the Christmases that I remember. Another Christmas that was a special one for me was when I was on my mission. And the thing that made that particular Christmas special was because it was normal. Go get them, exciting, materialistic Christmas. This was a Christmas where I was a brand new green missionary that had been out there for 3 months. My companion took off with his favorite companion that he'd been with for months before. They were put together and I was stuck with another greenie doing nothing. And I got up that morning and Mom had sent out some slippers and some sea suckers. And all of you who've had to down the sea suckers through the years, that's reminiscent of that particular experience. And the reason Mom did that was because I told her that was one of the most interesting Christmases one of the best Christmases that I'd ever had. And what happened was I got up that morning, I looked out over England. We lived up on a hill by a castle. And I looked out over the city, down to the big river, and here were all these little smokestacks. In England, there's smokestacks everywhere. If you've ever seen pictures of England. And all these smokestacks had smoke coming out. And I pictured those families doing what we did. All those kids running down the hallway and gathering together and burning the paper in the fireplace and the excitement that took place. But it was silent. You know, I thought about the silence. It was deathly silent. And I turned around and sat in my chair, got out the Bible, and read the scriptures. And the Spirit came into that room, and I sucked on those suckers, those sea suckers, put those slippers on, and had the most spiritual Christmas morning that I've ever had in my entire life. Tremendously wonderful Christmas. Certainly the opposite of what I had ever expected in my lifetime. But the Christmas of all Christmases for me is this one. And the reason it's this one is because it's one more Christmas with my parents. And when you get older, you realize that you don't know if there's going to be another Christmas. And you share it. You get to the point where you cherish each one. And it's, for us, another opportunity to soak it in, enjoy each of you, and have one more one of these. So for me, this is my favorite Christmas. And the reason it's my favorite Christmas is because those two are here. You are here. So thank you.
I think the favorite Christmas of mine was the most meager Christmas that I ever had. Wade? Wade's kind friend wrote this story up a long time ago, but he used what we call poetic license. And as he changed a lot of it to make it sound what he thought was a little more interesting. But he didn't live it, and he wasn't around it. So he had no idea how shallow his story was in comparison to what the real one was. I was born in 1928, and that was just before the crash. I'm sure you've all heard about depression, but none of you have any idea what it was like. In fact, I only know the top bit of it, because as you can imagine, I wasn't very big before things started to get a little better. Now when I say a little better, that's just what I mean, a little better. The world was in this depression, not just America. In Russia, they were eating each other. In Germany, they would use whole wheelbarrows of cash for one loaf of bread. America was doing better than most, but we were in difficult times. Something that you've never seen, and thank God you have not. They joke about we old folks who need patent money, they call it. Money that you can touch. Because people like President Hinckley and a lot of our parents saved and saved and saved. And when the banks couldn't pay them their money, they had none. So people like us have money in the bank, but we've got patent money. And that's why. We want you all to remember that someday it could happen again. And please be careful. Please be careful. Daddy was telling me that some have mortgages where they just assume that the mortgage is going to go up, and so they don't pay anything except the interest on their loan. It could happen, and mostly it works out great, but it could go the other way.
So I prefaced this with this story. This was about 13 years later after the fall. The crash would be a better word. And this is the story of my father. It's called The Masterpiece, a true story of sacrifice. Mom and Dad Windward lived modestly in their home on 5th East. They had worked hard to get their large brick home, and with depression, even harder to keep it. Their situation was better than most who had lost everything in the crash and subsequent bank failures. They had always been conservative and industrious, and this lifestyle had helped them, their situation. It was no small task, however, to maintain any kind of living during these hard times. It seemed that these times would go on forever. Life was an endless stream of endless days of work and restless nights of worry. No wonder that these sometimes had the feeling that the light at the end of the tunnel was nothing more than a sealed beam of an oncoming train. There had been happier times. Dad was a hunter, and he loved to hunt. But even more importantly, he liked the practicality of being able to provide meat for their large family of 8 children. His father had taught him to hunt for food, and he was teaching his boys. For years, the rifle taken to the deer woods by the majority of the Utah hunters was a time-tested .30-30 lever-action saddle gun. It was, of course, the gun that won the West. Dad had learned to hunt with the .30-30, but V yearned for something better. Now the argument about which gun was best always came down to these two: the .300 Savage or the .30-06. The .06 around the hunting camp seemed to be the favorite. The ones who owned them proclaimed their superiority over anything else loudly and endlessly. V had heard the stories and knew that there was some basis of fact in their claims. He was more knowledgeable than most and had placed his order for one of the first .30-06 rifles in the state. He had saved up precious cash to purchase what was to become his pride and joy. This was his one and only personal possession of value. The day he brought home the new model, Mom was thrilled when she saw the youthful, boyish look of satisfaction in her husband's eyes. As Merlin watched the happiness and pleasure that filled his expression, it gave her much happiness too. This polished piece of joy that she had, this polished piece of walnut and steel obviously gave her man joy that she had seldom seen in him before. Since that moment, as far as anyone could remember, the old masterpiece, as he named it, never escaped a day without a good buffing and dozens of admiring looks from its proud owner. It was true. It was easy to carry. It was sleek. It was handsome and highly accurate in skilled hands such as his. Many a campfire wager was settled by Dad when his .30-06 brought down yet another buck for winter eating. V sat comfortably in his overstuffed chair, mulling over these happy thoughts, looking out over the window at children playing in the snow-covered park. He had held down 4 jobs when most men couldn't find one. I might mention in here that men would stand in line for days, I mean days, and they wouldn't eat because they had nothing to eat, to try to get one job. But my dad was so much of a hustler that he got 4. And he didn't sleep. He just had 20-minute breaks where he would sleep for 20 minutes and then he would work 24 hours a day. There had been serious family illnesses, but with saving, skimping, and working extra hard, he was able to take care of the problems and still count on enough cash in his wife Merlin's hand to give his large family a Merry Christmas. How happy and blessed he felt, and oh, how he loved his wife and children. At this very moment, his wife was shopping downtown. She had walked miles and miles trying to save a nickel here and a dime there. As she picked up an article to check its quality, she put down her purse for just one instant. A thief quickly snatched the purse and ran out of the store before she could even realize what had happened. Slowly, she slid her trembling hand into her pocket. Did she even have enough change for a bus ride home? It was then 10 cents. Could she call to a family member from a payphone? 10 cents. Yes, she gasped. A dime and a penny. She could get home. It was evident that when her tired steps entered the cozy home, that something was drastically wrong. Only 2 small packages in her hand, and an expression that was holding back tears on her quiet white face. He read the fright and the utter despair that was on her face, and he ran to her. He took her in his arms. What's wrong? What's the matter, dear? She placed her head in his big chest and sobbed as she tried to explain the wrenching experience she had just been through. She felt so guilty. Why did she ever relinquish the hold on that purse, even for just 1 second? It will all be okay, he said. His voice was calming but worried. Don't worry. He patted her head and rubbed her back. What will you ever do? She sobbed. I'll think of something, was the answer. Back to the desk and the budget. Can we cut down here? Can we put off this for a while? How can I work this out? He was not given to despair, and he certainly wasn't going to slip into it now. He had met real danger and hardship many times in his life, and had always managed. He would certainly manage again during this precious time of year. His kids would have a Christmas, regardless of the state of the Windward Treasury, and the Windward Treasury was pretty dismal. Back to his comfortable chair that sat next to his warm fireplace. A good place, he thought, to figure this out. A place to worry, scheme, and muse. I'll find a way, he said to himself. I'll find a way. Rarely did he sit long in this big chair without his friend, his old masterpiece. He went to the closet and reached for his gun, taking it down from his high shelf. Maybe his friend, a glint came in his eye, his old masterpiece, could bring a Christmas to his family after all. Perhaps he could pawn the gun. He knew it had real value. One last time he softly stroked and polished it. Then, with a deep breath, he headed to the pawnbroker. A week later, Bob, the youngest son, was working his new job at Bowers Home Furnishings. Time for lunch, the boss declared. Bob went outside and across the street to walk to a grassy knoll where they ate their sack lunch. As he was passing the window of the pawn shop, there was his father's precious gun. Could it be his father's precious gun? Could it be? It couldn't. Yes, I'm almost sure. He turned on his heels and headed for his bike. Home was only a few fast pedals away. He knew if he hurried, he could get back to work on time. Bob rushed into the kitchen of the Windward home. Mom, Jerry, and Joanne were baking the last of the Christmas goodies. The presents had all been purchased and wrapped, and this was the last bit of the holiday preparation. Mom, Bob exclaimed, I'm just sure I saw Dad's gun in the window of the pawn shop. Merlin's face broke into a stunned silence. Oh goodness, it's my fault, she said to herself. So that's where he got the money. Now she sadly understood. Joanne began to cry. That gun was his favorite thing in the whole world, she blurted out, between sobs. Let's go make sure, Mother whispered. They rushed to the cherished spot in hopes of quenching their fears. Hesitantly, as though they were afraid to look, they peered at the highestmost shelf, then felt with their hands as though it might be way back somehow. They knew it was not. The old masterpiece was gone. Bob's mind was in a whirl, churning to repair the problem. We can't let him do this, Mom. Maybe I can get the boss to give me this month's pay and the next check in advance, then I can buy it back. Without waiting for a reply, Robert was out of the kitchen door and onto his bike. It was clear what had to be done. Bob had to find a way to redeem the rifle before it could be sold to satisfy the loan. He pumped like he had never pumped before. He rushed to his employer and explained the problem to Mr. Bowers. "Yes," he said, "I think I can do that, Bob, if you work a few extra hours in the holidays." "Yes," was the enthusiastic reply. He ran with the cash in his hand to the pawn shop across the street. He looked at the broker in the eye. "I want to buy the .36 gun in the window," he said, clutching the money in his shaking hands. "Sorry, son, I just sold it. Merchandise like that doesn't last long." I've never seen such meticulously cared for piece of machinery. That was a real deer getter, a magnificent weapon. His description of the precious treasure hadn't helped the blow. Robert bowed his head in resignation and stuffed the bills into his worn pockets. It was nice of Mr. Bowers, he thought. I'll work the extra time anyway. Christmas was a glorious day. Each newly revealed toy or skate was opened with quiet reverence and appreciation. The joy and happiness was mixed with the renowned blessing of a father's love. Vi and Merlin were holding hands as they watched their beloved brood that Christmas morning. Even the walls seemed stunned and appreciative of this father's sacrifice. Each thank you was more thankful. Each present treasured all the more. Later as Vi returned to his comfortable old chair, he sat quietly, occasionally looking out the window at the children now playing in the park with their new sleds. He was thinking the warm, contented, but somehow bittersweet thoughts which we all allow ourselves when we have done well to others through sacrifice, devotion, and dedication to a higher principle. He laughed softly to himself, admitting that it really didn't matter that he didn't have his old masterpiece. It was very obvious that hawking it had been the right thing to do. Simply put, look at the smiles on the faces of my children. As we think of the sacrifice of the Son of God, we are happy that this gift provided forgiveness and eternal life, but we are saddened that it took such horrendous sacrifice. May we always treasure the godly sacrifice and live to show our appreciation. In a very small way, that spirit of sacrifice was emulated in the Windward household. There were tears of joy as they reverently opened each treasured gift. But there were tears of sadness at the sacrifice of their loving, wonderful father. So that was my most meager Christmas, but it was also the one that I most remember and most appreciate, and the one that reminds me most of Christmas and the sacrifice that Christ made for us and God made for us. So now on to a little happier thought. We have some door prizes. And Daddy, is this the place that it comes
in? I've learned that true affection continues to grow even longer when it's far off. And after some 60 years of marriage, my wife and I still are not ashamed to frequently express our external love, and we frequently reseal it with a kiss, even over the telephone when we are not together. And before we sleep each night and every night, I now quietly mind pray that we will one day be taken together. Almost sounds childish, doesn't it? But if that's the case, then so be it. For there would be no change and no apology given. one thing, in my opinion, that you could learn this evening, if anything else, and that is to seal your love in your families. This is the last Christmas party that we will probably be having. And so you will have the responsibility to pick up the tradition. You'll have to love. You'll have to sacrifice. I shouldn't say it this way, but I will. You'll have to give a damn. When the time comes to pull, you'll have to pull together. When the time comes to love, you'll have to love together. When you lose your parents and your brothers and others, you'll have to stow each other up. Merlin places flowers on my son's grave every day or every week for 365 days a year. That's the kind of love I'm talking about. Groups like this get together and we enjoy each other's company, and we speak of Santa Claus, and we give and we take and we do all these things. But I say again, the love that you have between yourself is the thing that bonds it. And we've got 60 years, who knows, maybe we'll have 120 years, and by then we'll get that doggone cougar song out of my mind.
We want to thank you for being here, and we want to tell you how much we love each and every one of you. And we want to remind you that this is a family, and it will always be a family, whether this party is held here or in your hearts or in your own homes, or whether there's someone who picks up this ball or not. We'll always be a family. And I've made these to help you remember that we are a family. I've done this work. This is all done by hand, and it took me hours, so you know I love you. But anyway, this is to help remind you.
What you're about to get, I would strongly suggest you hold carefully, keep forever, and frame.
Let's see what's inside.
Okay. Brian.